I got another really great question in the community asking how you navigate through the bear market, through what's happening right now. Bitcoin went all the way up to 109K, dropped back down to about 80K. Now it's at around 83, 84K. So the question is basically asking, how do you navigate these times when Bitcoin just keeps pulling back? How do you stay positive? So the question asks, it's called trusting the process. I was wondering about people who bought Bitcoin around November 2021. They had to wait over 2 years to see their equity finally rising. Was anyone else in this situation? I'm just mentally preparing myself for an extended period of decrease and being okay with it. So, this individual, the person who commented this is their first bull market from what I remember. So they are going through their first bull market. They're seeing Bitcoin's volatility. It's my first bull market as well. I'm not going to act like I've been around for longer than I have. I only started buying Bitcoin in 2022, but I feel like in general I have a firm grasp of how to navigate through bear markets and how to stick to your convictions and make sure that no matter what happens, you don't get shaken out of your position. In this video, I want to go through what I personally do to navigate these bear markets, these pullbacks, these times where Bitcoin is being sold at a discount because of panic and fear. The very first thing that I like doing is looking at the Bitcoin fear and greed index. So this is the crypto market sentiment analysis. It shows you how people are feeling about Bitcoin and the crypto markets as a whole. So in general, people are extremely emotional. People feel one way one day, and then the very next day, they feel completely different. So let's say, for example, here we have last week, extreme fear. At one point, this was down to a 10. So the lower it is, the closer it is to a zero, the more fearful people are. The higher it is, the closer it is to 100, the more greedy people are. So the more people want to buy. So in this case, if it goes to 10, it means that people are extremely fearful. People think that we're going to go through an extended bear market. They think we are already topped. They think that in the next, let's say, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, Bitcoin's price is going to go much, much lower. And they want to get rid of everything they have. This is a problem because if you're wrong, you price yourself out of Bitcoin forever. If we look at Bitcoin's price chart, we can see that around March 10th, Bitcoin's price bottomed at around $77,000. I don't know if it's going to go lower. I can't tell you what's going to happen in the short term. I can't tell you what's going to happen in the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. I don't know. Based on trends, though, Bitcoin will be higher in 4 years than it is today. So, what happened here is some people sold their Bitcoin at $77,000 at the very bottom on March 10th of 2025. So this was 8 days ago. And now, since that point, Bitcoin is up like 7%. So they lost out on 7% because maybe they sold out of fear, maybe they sold because they thought that Bitcoin is going much, much lower. But if we go back to the fear and greed index, we can see on March 14th, the fear and greed index was at 27. On March 10th, it was at 20. On March 4th, it was at 15. And on February 27th, it was at 10. If we take a look at the price again, we can see that whenever people are extremely fearful, the price bottoms and then it bounces back up. So on February 27th, people were extremely fearful. February 28th, we saw the bottom. And after that, Bitcoin came back up. So the first thing that I do is I look at the fear and greed index and I try to make a conclusion of how people are thinking about the market. If they're extremely fearful, then why would I sell? If they're extremely greedy, maybe it is time to sell, but I don't plan to sell my Bitcoin. So to me, the bottoms are pretty easy to go through. If anything, I think of the bottoms as an opportunity to buy more. Now, keep in mind that these are things that I do to build up my confidence again, because no matter how long you've been around Bitcoin, no matter how seasoned you think you are with markets, every drop is still going to feel a little bit scary. You're always going to think that your net worth dropped by 15, 20, 25%. You're always going to think about how maybe this is the drop that Bitcoin never recovers from. So these are the things that I do to build up my confidence again and maybe start thinking about the long term instead of just looking at the short term price movements. So the second thing that I do is I look at Bitcoin's 4-year moving average price. We can see that in the short term, Bitcoin's price moves up and it comes down, moves up, comes down, moves up, comes down. We can see that's volatile. We can see it's extremely volatile. But we can also see that the 4-year moving average price is always going up. Bitcoin's price is always higher 4 years into the future. So, what you know here is that over time, even though Bitcoin may fall, eventually it'll come back up. No matter what happens, even if Bitcoin falls 70, 80%, it's already happened a few times. Bitcoin's price is always going to recover. And the reason for that is that over time, more and more people are buying Bitcoin and they plan to never sell again. The people who lead to these short term price movements are the tourists, the people who don't really understand what Bitcoin is. They buy the top hoping for massive profits and then they sell the bottom because they can't handle the volatility. They did no research before buying Bitcoin. So when there's any kind of movement that they don't like, they sell. So I tell myself to focus on the long term price movement. Don't focus on the short term. The short term doesn't matter. When you buy Bitcoin, you buy it with a 4-year time horizon, minimum 4 years. So if you're going to buy Bitcoin, you plan to hold for a minimum of 4 years. What this means is that you expect to be wrong for 4 years. You expect that as soon as you buy, at some point in the next 4 years, Bitcoin's price will be cheaper than whatever you paid for it. So let's say you paid $50,000, maybe Bitcoin's price will be at $20,000. At that point, you can use the opportunity to buy more, but you're not going to get shaken out. You're not going to sell for less than you bought for because in 4 years, Bitcoin's price is going to recover. And if you sell and you sell the bottom, you're going to feel extremely stupid. So the people who sold, back to that chart, the people who sold here, maybe in 4 years they're going to feel extremely stupid. Maybe they sold here expecting that Bitcoin's price is going to draw back down to 40, 30, $20,000. And then what if it never happens? They just keep waiting and waiting and waiting, and Bitcoin's price never drops back down this low again. So I tell myself to focus more on the long term rather than the short term. The short term is always going to be volatile. You can expect Bitcoin's price to be down 15, 20, 25% in a day, but over the long term, you know that it'll be up from where it was 4 years ago. The third thing that I try to focus on is why people buy Bitcoin in the first place. People buy Bitcoin because it's the best store of value to exist. Over time, more and more people believe this and they put their wealth into Bitcoin. They move their wealth from the legacy financial system, from their 20th century assets to the 21st century. They move their savings, their time, their energy, their effort into Bitcoin. Over time, as more people put their wealth into Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin increases. Now, you have to remember that there's a finite number of Bitcoin available, and every single time there's a purchase, some percentage of that Bitcoin will never move again. So, let's say, for example, every single day, 1% of the purchases that are made are put into wallets that will never sell their Bitcoin again. Right now, Bitcoin is building that foundation of people who will never sell their Bitcoin for US dollars again. So these people are going to hold on to that Bitcoin no matter what happens, no matter where the price goes. They're never going to sell it again. Bitcoin will run out at every single US dollar price because the US dollar can be created out of nothing. So over time, as people are locking their Bitcoin away, there are fewer and fewer Bitcoin available to be sold for dollars. We're never going to go back to the prices that we went through before. We're never going to go back to $1. We're never going to go back to $10. We're never going to go back to $100. We're never going to go back to those prices because nobody's going to be willing to sell their Bitcoin for those prices again. And over time, as Bitcoin is locked away, fewer and fewer Bitcoin are available for every single US dollar price. Let's say, for example, there may be people who are willing to sell for $1 million. Some people who are willing to sell for $5 million. How long will it take for that Bitcoin to come into the market? If countries start printing money and start buying millions of Bitcoin, we're going to reach those levels much quicker than most people expect. So if I'm thinking long term, why would I want to sell my Bitcoin at a discount when I know for a fact that over time, Bitcoin runs out at every single price? Why would I sell my Bitcoin for US dollars when I don't need US dollars right now. I think of Bitcoin as a savings account. Whenever I have extra US dollars, I buy some Bitcoin. When I need more US dollars, I sell some Bitcoin. It's as simple as that. I don't borrow against my Bitcoin. I don't do any of that. If I have to, I'll sell a little bit of Bitcoin. I'll use my credit card to avoid selling my Bitcoin. I'll try to increase my income. My goal here is to use Bitcoin as a savings account. I plan to hold my Bitcoin for as long as possible, and there's no real plans for that Bitcoin right now. And every single day, there are more and more people who think exactly like I do. So when nobody on earth is willing to sell their Bitcoin for US dollars, what happens? Where do we go next? This takes us perfectly into the fourth thing that I try to do when we go through a dip, a pullback, and that's thinking about where Bitcoin is going to take the world next. I personally think that if people were to get to 0.01 Bitcoin, zero point 0.1 Bitcoin, zero point 0.2 Bitcoin, 1 Bitcoin, whatever your target is, if you were to get to those goals, you're going to be way wealthier than you are today because that Bitcoin is going to increase in purchasing power. Over time, it's going to buy more and more things. Let's say all you can afford is 20, 30, 40, $50 worth of Bitcoin every week. These pullbacks are a gift. We're going back in time. The price is falling back down to where it was a few months ago. Why wouldn't you use this to your advantage? So if you're a millennial or you're a Gen Z and you can buy zero point 0.1, 0.2 Bitcoin, you're going to put yourself decades ahead of your peers. If you're a Gen X or you're a baby boomer up to 70 years old, you're at a little bit of an advantage here because you may have some retirement savings set aside. So instead of having to aggressively dollar cost average into Bitcoin, you can just sell some of your assets and buy Bitcoin with it. Let's say, for example, you have $100,000 set aside. Your purchasing power went from being able to buy about zero point 0.9 Bitcoin at the top to now being able to buy about 1.2 Bitcoin. So, why wouldn't you be happy? If you think of Bitcoin as a ticket to freedom and the volatility as the opportunity cost of buying Bitcoin over other assets, then I think you're going to do extremely well. If you understand where Bitcoin is going, instead of getting fearful like the majority of people today, you're going to buy Bitcoin. You're going to take this opportunity to add to your stack. A lot of people were able to sell at pretty high prices during the beginning of that last bear market in 2022, but they didn't buy back because number one, they forgot. Number two, they thought it would go lower. Or number three, they spent the money that they got out of Bitcoin the first time that they sold it. So instead of buying back, they priced themselves out of ever being able to buy the same amount of Bitcoin again. I don't want to put myself in this position. I don't want to have to sell and then have to make the decision to buy back in. And then Bitcoin's price goes even lower and I feel stupid. I don't want to go through that. I don't want to have to go through paying taxes. I don't want to deal with that. My goal is just to buy and hold for 10, 15, 20 years, however long it takes to financially free my family. At that point, it's not like I'm going to retire and just stop working. I'm going to still try to avoid selling my Bitcoin by creating more and more value. If I can hold this Bitcoin as long as possible, every 4 years, maybe it adds another zero. But if I need to sell some, that's perfectly fine. I'll sell some and I'll pay for whatever I need. If my family wants to go on a vacation, that's perfectly fine. I've held my Bitcoin, I've delayed gratification, and now I deserve to use it. And keep in mind, I'm talking about 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So let's go back to the post here. I'm just preparing myself for an extended period of decrease and being okay with it. Like I said in this video, the first thing that I do is I look at the fear and greed index and I think about how the average person is most likely going to be wrong about Bitcoin. They don't understand Bitcoin. So if they're fearful, I should probably be buying. The second thing I do is I think about where Bitcoin is going to be in 4 or more years by looking at the moving average price. I personally think that Bitcoin is going to be worth a lot more. So why would I sell now when it's being sold at a discount? The third thing that I do is I think about the problem that Bitcoin solves and how it's the best at solving that problem, meaning that more and more people will be adopting Bitcoin over time. Only, let's say, 1% of the world has adopted it already. And the fourth thing that I do is I think about how people like myself, people like you, are adding value to the Bitcoin network by allocating your capital, all of your resources to that network. You've spent 10 years, 15 years saving those resources, and now you put them all into the Bitcoin network. Bitcoin is going to take the world to places that most people can't even imagine. I think Bitcoin is going to change the world completely. So trust the process, buy Bitcoin, hold for at least 4 years, and I think you're going to be very, very happy. If you're interested in joining the community, you can check the link in the description below. There are quite a few things in this community. We have a section where people can communicate with one another. They can ask questions. They can talk about whatever they really want to. We have a classroom section. I'm not going to show you the community just to keep the privacy of the people who have joined the group. We have a classroom section here where we have live sessions. So every week we have live sessions. We do a question and answer session. We just talk about random different topics. All of the live sessions are recorded and posted in the community. We have topic videos. These are the YouTube videos that I've created about different topics. You can just access them all here. We have the Bitcoin fundamentals mini course. So this is where I go into a deep dive of what Bitcoin is and what the value that it provides is. Then we have the Bitcoin purchase and storage masterclass. In this class, I go through UTXO management. I go through transferring your Bitcoin to a Trezor wallet from an exchange. The next thing that's included here is the personal finance basics and the personal finance full course. And the last thing is the ebook, the 10 common misconceptions that people have when it comes to Bitcoin. Like I said, we do these weekly live sessions. If you want to, you can join, you can ask any questions that you have. The price for this community is $20 a month. I've been trying to add as much value here as I can over the last year or so. So you already have a ton of content that you can go through that's not available anywhere else. And remember, if you have any questions, you can join the community, you can ask the question, and I'll do a deep dive video answering the question that you have. I also have a link in the description if you want to book a paid one-on-one meeting with me, if you want me to go through your statements, if you want me to go through your finances, your expenses, your Bitcoin holdings, whatever you want to go through, you can ask me any questions one on one. I'm also sponsored by the Bitcoin Way. If you want to, you can book a free appointment with them. Again, link is in the description below. You can talk to them about your storage, you can talk to them about setting up a wallet, anything that you really want to do in regards to Bitcoin. I hope this video was valuable. If you want more content like this, of course, subscribe, leave a thumbs up. It really helps with the algorithm.